Hey everyone, welcome back for episode 5. Whether you're watching this on my YouTube channel or listening on my podcast, this is going to be a breakdown for Deadpool Classic Volume 3. This week we're taking a look at this volume, which takes place just after the conclusion of the last volume. If you want to know what happened there, then take a look back at episode 3 where I broke that down. You know what we do here, we break down the comics and then I rate the comic to my own personal scale. It's nothing really fancy or official, just my opinion. So this volume encompasses issues 9 through 17, so it's quite a few issues. You'll notice that older Marvel volumes tend to have a long issue count. This volume was written and contributed to Stan Lee and Joe Kelly, with Al Milgrom, Joe Sinnott, Ed McGuinness, Shannon Denton, Pete Woods, and then John Romita Jr. as illustrators for different and various issues. This volume was released in December of 2009 and follows Deadpool's journey to becoming a hero. Maybe. In the last volume, the idea was raised that Deadpool's current love interest, Teresa, or Siren from X-Force, she is a good Irish lad and has been working to help Deadpool see the light, become a hero. That was until Typhoid Mary came into the picture. Deadpool almost crossed the line of his new no-kill rule he set for himself, and in this volume we see the aftermath of that close encounter. Basically, he's spiraling. He wants to be good, he just doesn't know where to begin or how to proceed on his own. In issue 9, Al is concerned because Wade has been spending a lot of time in the box, which we get more information in later, so I'll talk about it then. Basically, it's a room in the house that's very dangerous. Wade, though, isn't interested in talking about the box or Mary. He actually forbids it, and then he heads to the Hill House, the Merc dive hole where they pick up assignments, and instead of his usual Merc jobs, this time he's looking for a hero gig. Something where he can prove to himself that he's on the right track. There aren't a lot of options, so when a cloaked man is looking for someone to help save a princess, Deadpool jumps at the opportunity. So he boards a plane and follows along until he learns that this is not the gig he thought it was. Of course, he learns this when he wakes up strapped to a table wearing a bib and bonnet, with the cloaked figure not looking to help a princess. Instead, this is Death Trap, and he's looking to use Deadpool to test out a new method for killing. After spending time with Deadpool, he has the perfect plan. He has this large teddy bear rigged above Deadpool that will crush him to death, and it lowers inch by inch with everything that Deadpool says. And in true Deadpool fashion, instead of taking this time for silent reflection, he tells mom jokes. Later, he explains it was a distraction so that he could break his own wrist to get his gun. Unfortunately, though, Al has played some pranks on him that she is simultaneously telling Weasel about, so this really is just a disaster for Deadpool. However, he does manage to live through being crushed by the bear, and Death Trap lets Deadpool walk away unharmed because this was all a really good laugh for him, and he promises that they'll see each other again as friends, but that doesn't happen in this volume. I want to tell you that the next issue isn't as weird, but I'm afraid that issue 10 and 11 are very weird, but also pretty entertaining. Issue 10 has Deadpool toying with Al in a way that he hasn't done for a long time. I explained in the last podcast and video that Al is a prisoner of Deadpool, and while they have a mostly good relationship now because she's managed to see the good in him, she's still very much a prisoner, and she's been struggling to sleep because she's so worried about him after his encounter with Typhoid Mary. He has been going to the box, and now he springs a road trip on her. They end up at an aquarium, which is a road trip they have taken before, and he has the idea to play a game with her that they haven't played in a long time, which is going to a public place together, and if she can get free and escape, then he will let her go. This is concerning to Al. Not only does she know that this game isn't for her to win, it also tells her that Deadpool's mental state may be more fragile than she thought. Part of Deadpool wants to let her go before things get too bad. He can feel that it's going in that direction, but another bigger part is not going to allow that to happen, and she knows it. So she plays along and goes off walking. Meanwhile, a few other things happen. At Hell House, Zoe is keeping an eye on Typhoid Mary with a goal to eliminate her. We know that Zoe works for Lando, Luckman, and Lake, who believe that Deadpool is a hero that they are after, so they're interested in seeing him become a hero, and Zoe knows that Mary is a roadblock in making that happen. However, Mary dupes Zoe by making her think that she has vanished, maybe using a teleporter, but really she sneaks up behind Zoe as she's leaving and steals her tablet, which has all of her official Lando, Luckman, and Lake info. That will be important in a later issue. Another thing that happened is Weasel showing at Deadpool's to talk with Al. This is an off-limit zone for Weasel, but over the last few issues, he has been dropping by when Deadpool is gone to check in on Al. This time he shows and finds only Dog there, who was sent back to the house by Al. Worried Weasel has a dog take him to Al, which will be a thing here in just a minute. But probably the most pressing thing happening is the Great Lakes Avengers, which is this crazy group of heroes with rather weird abilities and powers. They're just a group that want to be Avengers, but are just really weird. They're currently rebranding as the Lightning Rods, and the group includes Mr. Immortal, who's immortal, Flatman, who is flat, Big Bertha, who's a woman that can increase her size to an ginormous overweight woman. There is Dinosaur, who's a flying dinosaur, and then Doorman, who is kind of a doorway through space. He basically teleports people or himself. They also happen to be at the aquarium and attack Deadpool because, well, Deadpool's not a good guy. So this leads to a scene, and Deadpool finds out while Weasel and the dog show at the same time. It's really just a cluster. But it gets even more chaotic when Deadpool attempts to teleport him and Al out of there at the same time that Doorman touches them, creating a rift in the fabric of time and space, sending both Deadpool and Al back in time into issue 11. Now this issue has Deadpool and Al not only back in the past, but in an issue of Amazing Spider-Man from 1967. This issue is actually featured at the end of the volume. I'm not going to go over it because the main plot is explained here. But if you pick up this volume, it's there, and I think it's worth a read. Because this issue can affect the space-time continuum, we see that it is being watched by the Watcher, which you may know from the new What If series. He doesn't interfere in the events that unfold here, but he does watch, and you can see him kind of relieved at the end when all works out. Initially, Deadpool and Al don't know that they are in the past, but Deadpool learns this by trying to go to the Hell House and finding that it's still a school for wayward girls. He also finds the not-so-nice end of a ruler at the hands of a nun. What makes this more interesting is the location they dropped in on is the home of one May Parker, the beloved aunt of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and they immediately knock her out. I don't think it's terribly important to know the events of this issue, but of the Amazing Spider-Man issue, but what you do want to know is, and what is explained, is that Craven has recently broken out of prison and has a score to settle with Spider-Man, Green Goblin, and Norm Osborn. When he is first out, he learns that Green Goblin has already been eliminated by Spider-Man, leaving his sights set mostly on Norm Osborn. However, Deadpool and Al are finding the hardest part at this point is managing Ann Watson, MJ's aunt. May and Anne are planning to move in together, and Anne isn't letting up when Al tries to deter her from coming in. So instead, Al poses as May to distract Anne while Deadpool tries to figure out a way to get out of here. At this point, he gets a message from Weasel in the future using an aftershock of their rift. The plan is for both of them to use the teleporters exactly at midnight. The problem is Deadpool's teleporter is broken. So the goal is now to get it fixed. He sees this picture on the wall that has Weasel in it, who just happened to be friends with Peter Parker back in the day, and plans to seek him out and get his help fixing the belt, all without affecting the flow of time. Deadpool does this by using his image inducer and pretending to be Peter Parker. He does not know that Peter is Spider-Man, but that he is a photographer most famed for being friends and consistently catching the images of the web slinger. So Deadpool distracts Peter by making a phone call telling him of criminal activity to kind of just get him out of the way. Weasel isn't as cooperative as he hoped though, because he sees Peter as competition for an upcoming job at Osborne Chemicals. Luckily, both Al and Deadpool learn about Gwen Stacy's party, and they use this as a way to get Weasel. First, Deadpool gets him invited, and then he plans to get him a little tipsy to convince him to work on the belt. The hiccup in the plan is Craven, who's been hunting for Norm Osborn and learns that his son Harry and best friend to Peter Parker is going to be at this party. Wade sneaks off as Peter and reveals himself as Deadpool to stop Craven and save everyone, and as a thank you, he basically sabotages Weasel's chance to get a job at Osborne Chemical, although he wasn't really going to go anyway, so no real harm done. Weasel does fix the belt after a few rounds of drink. Deadpool grabs Al, and they're teleported back to the present at midnight. Now, back in the present, we head into issue 12, with T-Ray finally taking center stage. They've been building this since the last volume. Deadpool is looking for Siren. He needs to talk to her. He really needs to get a grip on his moral compass, because she's really the reference point he has for good behavior. He does find a location where she has been, but is now long gone. Instead, T-Ray arrives and challenges Deadpool for this long-awaited face-off. But not today. Tomorrow at noon in San Francisco. Zoe arrives immediately after T-Ray leaves to warn him that this is a trap, and obviously Deadpool knows that too, but he is still more interested in finding Siren and attempts to force Zoe to find her and take him to her. She can do that with a tech from Lando Luckman and Lake, but she doesn't. Deadpool is still on edge when he arrives home to blind Al. He has a moment where he suspects that someone has been at the house, which is forbidden, but Al literally slaps him. She's under no delusion that he wouldn't hurt her if he found out the Weasel is visit, but she also knows that Deadpool is going through something, which is the real problem here. Eventually, he does locate Siren, who's at a Field of Dreams, the Field of Dreams baseball thing, with fellow X-Force member James Proudstar. Deadpool really messes this encounter up by first picking a fight with Proudstar and then neglecting to see things from Siren's point of view when she talks about her recent issues with X-Force and the zero tolerance stuff happening in X-Men at this time. Basically, she just doesn't have it in her to help him stay on the straight and narrow and feels that he's being selfish, so she leaves. Deadpool stays behind and drinks for a while until that evening when Siren comes back and they make amends. By making amends, it's strongly implied that they spend adult time together. However, when we get into issue 13, the events of the next morning, Deadpool learns that this was not Siren at all, but really Typhoid Mary using the tech she stole from Zoe. He does not react well to this at all, and Zoe's concerned that this is the end for any chance to help Deadpool become a hero that they need him to be. In fact, Monty tells her that maybe they should just let him die. In Deadpool's messed up state, he thinks that maybe he shouldn't fight with T-Ray, which just isn't in the right headspace. When Deadpool leaves, Al calls Weasel and he teleports over to see what's up. The problem is Deadpool teleported to Weasel's to see what he was up to. So looking at the tracking for himself and Weasel, Deadpool's confused at first, but isn't happy when it dawns on him that Weasel is at his house with Al. With this betrayal, Deadpool just really flies off the rails. He attacks both Weasel and Al, and we don't see them again until later, but they do end up in the box. Now that Deadpool is truly spiraling after losing Terry and now Al and Weasel, he decides that he is going to fight T-Ray and meets him in the park. Zoe arrives at the park but is knocked out by the old man that we saw talking in German briefly about Deadpool earlier in the issue. He was also in the last volume and seems to have a vested interest in Deadpool. We will talk more about him later though. When Zoe comes to the fight with T-Ray and Deadpool, it is well underway, and she walks away knowing that Deadpool is just lost at this point. And Deadpool truly does get his ass handed to him in the park, with T-Ray unloading a lot of powers and abilities that Deadpool didn't even know he had, like making it snow in the middle of San Francisco. When it is all said and done, Deadpool is assumed to be dead, with T-Ray revealing this was all a setup by him to make him alienate both Teresa as well as Weasel and Al. And we do see after in issue 14 that he's been working with Typhoid Mary. As proof that he beat Deadpool, he takes the teleporter and heads to Hell House, where he is now the new top dog, but then he immediately takes a vacation. Issue 14 is just the aftermath of this showdown, with Deadpool spending a large portion of the issue in the park under ice. Al and Weasel, though, are in the box, and Al is resigned to the fact that she'll just be here for a while until Deadpool releases her, but Weasel is wanting to get the hell out of here. It's a weapons-filled room full of booby traps. Eventually, they do leave the room after learning that the door wasn't even locked. Weasel then takes off completely, and we learn in issue 15 that he's gone for good and asks Deadpool not to look for him. The big moments of the issue, though, are Ajax making his arrival looking for anyone connected to the Weapons X program where he and several others were created. He is specifically looking for Deadpool and is willing to kill and maim to get that information. He becomes more prevalent in issues 15, 16, and 17 when he tracks down Todd, who sends him to Hell House, and then Hell House sends him to Killbrew. We see him more in the next volume, which we'll talk about when we pick it up next week. The other big moment is Zoe. She is feeling rather defeated when she gets this glimmer of hope from Monty. She thought that this showdown in the park was the end for making Deadpool into a hero, but Monty now sees in the future that it's all really just beginning. With Deadpool losing everything, he's now almost a blank slate, so she heads back to the park to get Deadpool when he breaks himself out of the ice. There's also a moment with the old German-speaking guy reminding Deadpool that his path to redemption is going to be something that he has to travel on his own. He can't rely on other people to redeem him. It's something he needs to do for himself. Issue 15 takes Deadpool to Lando, Luckman, and Lake, where the Mithras Directive begins to become the main story. The plan is that he will work with them to become a hero for now. He's really in the dark about the larger purpose that is being hinted at by Zoe, Monty, and Dixon, Zoe's boss. This Mithras Directive is even hidden from the 3 L's that are running the place, but the hope is that whatever is about to happen, Deadpool can help with. Deadpool, of course, has a hand in creating chaos at Lando, Luckman, and Lake after wandering into a lab and exposing sunlight to this dangerous creature named Doris that is activated by light. She then tears through the office with Dixon giving orders not to kill it because of the money they have invested in her. Eventually, Deadpool stops the monster after finding out that it can be put to sleep by turning off the lights. However, he also takes this opportunity to kill it because he doesn't think this type of monster should be in the hands of anyone. Obviously, this gets him on Dixon's bad side, but Zoe smooths it over by spinning the story they will tell to the 3 L's. Issue 16 takes Deadpool away from everything, really, as he is working on a job with Bullseye, a fellow mercenary. He asks Deadpool on this job to talk to him and tell him that he needs to get his head on straight because he's lost his edge, and he's worried that if Deadpool continues on the way he's going, that he's going to end up dead. Then into the final issue, issue 17, introduces Deadpool to his destiny when he has a meeting at Lando, Luckman, and Lake. They show him the future and explain the Mithras Directive to him. What is happening is that Monty has seen into the future that some type of alien being is going to be coming to Earth to help advance the world and stop things like war, prejudice, and suffering. The catch is Deadpool is somehow vital to the role of the aliens and it all working out. The details are sketchy, and Deadpool is overwhelmed to learn this. However, Monty gives him a test to see that this is all true. He tells him 3 things are going to happen to Deadpool in the near future. He's going to close a door to the sharpest part of his soul. He's going to open his bitter heart, which will give him a new lease on life. And then the devil will teach him mercy in the coldest circle of hell. Deadpool then leaves and goes home. He immediately amends things with Al, who has been bitter with him since the box incident. Deadpool takes his first step in fixing this by boarding up the box for good, checking off one of the things that Monty had said to him, which is closing the door to the sharpest part of his soul. So that is the entire volume summed up. So let's rate this. Overall story is pretty high. I like that they are making it a real struggle for him to be good. Not that he is all that bad either. He just has issues. Really good at showing that. He just didn't wake up and was like, oh, I'm a hero now. It's a process and there are a lot of factors working against him. I give it a 4.8. Not perfect, but good. The character also scores pretty high. I like Deadpool's development, obviously, but then I like Blind Owl. The way she handles Deadpool is a sad, tragic, weird kind of way. Don't get me wrong, she's 100% abused, and Deadpool is really shitty to her, but she also manages to still see the good in him. But I also like Weasel, that he broke away from the abuse and said enough is enough. I know that Deadpool fans may not agree, but Deadpool is not a pleasant person to be around. And I also like the inclusion of the Great Lakes Avengers, Bullseye, and a little peek of what's to come with Ajax, along with the old school Amazing Spider-Man stuff. So for characters, I give it a 4.5. Was it easy to read? I thought this was pretty easy to get through. The stories are fast paced, which I'll talk more about here in a minute. I don't think the story is in any way confusing if you accept the unacceptable that is the comic book world. My 12-year-old read this with me and he understood it pretty well as an average reader for his age, although the content may be too much for some 12-year-olds, so keep that in mind. I'm not necessarily recommending this for kids, but my son enjoyed it and can handle this type of content, so I give it a 5 in easy to read. Pacing, like I mentioned, is fast, but just like with the last volume, Deadpool is a fast-paced character, so it works for him. It would not work if it was slower paced. If this was a less chaotic character, then it would be too fast. I think the Spider-Man issue was really slow and not a lot of action for a Deadpool issue, but it was trying to fit it into the style of an old comic. Overall, I give pacing a 4.5. And then artwork. Like the last volume as well, I really like this art style for Deadpool. You can see the difference in eras clearly when you're looking at that Spider-Man issue, which is older style and what was popular then. Even now, comic book style is different from these Deadpool issues, but given the time period, the character, I give it a 5. So overall, I'm rating this comic a 4.7. So that's all I have for you guys today. Later this week on Thursday, I will be back with a Batman Volume 5 episode, which is all about the time when Riddler ruled the city and Dark City. And then next Monday is another Deadpool breakdown for Deadpool Classic Volume 4. After that, we have one more week of Deadpool with Volume 5, and then we'll jump over to some Black Panther stuff, all still in the pre-disassembled time period. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode or this video, however you're watching or listening. I hope you come back for more. Thank you for listening.